our dear friend, Michael Isikoff, who is, if there's anybody to talk about impeachment, it is you. He's the chief investigative correspondent for Yahoo News. He co-authored with David Corn, Russian Roulette, the insider's story of Putin's war on America and the election of Donald Trump, which was published a couple of years ago in March. Congratulations on the 2-year anniversary. You were also the author of Uncovering Clinton, a reporter's story, and also The Selling of the Iraq War. I mean, there's a lot of books.
Hubris.
Hubris. I'm reading this wrong. Yes, that makes more sense. Hubris, the inside story of spin, scandal, and the selling of the Iraq War. That might be a good book to read on our book club. We have a book club, Michael, cool. that we launched January. So that might be a good one.
I'll speak at your book club.
Would love that. We want to start doing live events for our book club right now.
Have your book club members buy the book, then I'll speak at the book club. How about that?
It's part of our book club. Great moment for a pitch.
All right.
You can join our book club at The Nomiki Show on Patreon. So patreon.com/The Nomiki Show. And you have 3 book options. 1 book a month, 2 books a month, or 4. And when the author is available, we have conversations with the author or other people about the book. Sometimes they're not alive. And you receive a book in the mail. And that's part of the process. It's, I'm a little
cool.
over my head, but it's okay.
I'm in.
Fantastic. All right. I'm just going to, double check that everything's working here. Yep, it's working. Okay, good. This is the new era, Michael. It's streaming, it's doing things from your living room, it's playing games with, members of Congress for hours. This is the world that we're living in. But I'm going to start off with a question before we get straight to impeachment. Would we really be living in this world without Donald Trump, the first reality TV show president who made reality TV show hit another level?
Interesting question. I thought this was going to lead to a COVID question because, the question in my mind is, will we ever go back? Will we ever leave our homes again? Will we ever go back to going to offices, interviewing people in person, seeing people, watching things? I mean, this has so much changed our lives for so long that this has become the new normal, what we're doing now. That said, your question about Donald Trump is totally on point. And, I'm so ambivalent about this week and this trial.
Great person to have on. Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm
because,
kidding.
I think that so many of us, just despite the fact that Donald Trump was great for ratings, great for book sales, great for podcast hits, great for everything, we all wanted to be through with the guy, right? Mm-hmm. We all wanted to move on. Enough of Donald Trump. And here we're going to be spending a full week talking about Donald Trump again, which is the last person that I think a lot of us wanted to be talking about or hearing about. That said, you're right. I mean, Trump is, there was a really interesting column by Margaret Sullivan in the Post today about Jeff Zucker and Donald Trump. And, the fact that it was Jeff Zucker who made Donald Trump, right?
How did this get lost? I mean, I know folks know, but my immediate response, Jeff Zucker, who just announced he was stepping down from leading CNN at the end of 2021, how convenient the timing there. But Jeff Zucker was the head of NBC when The Apprentice was the highest rated show.
He made The Apprentice. He was his idea. He put Trump out there and made him the media star that he became, which became the launch pad for his run for the presidency. And, 2015, early 2000, through the campaign in 2016, CNN, played him nonstop, all his speeches, all his rallies. Why? Because they rated well. And as Ben Smith shrewdly pointed out, Zucker is a ratings whore. He's always been. That was always his guide star. Now that is the nature of cable TV and network TV. It's all about the numbers. I could tell you stories about that from my own experiences there. at NBC, and and then at some point when he figures out that bashing Trump rates well as well, he turned his network into a let's bash Donald Trump every day, to the point where they were totally nonstop and turning people off left and right because they abandoned anything that smacked of dispassionate journalism and just became an anti-Trump station, all for the ratings. I mean, contributing to the polarization in our country. I mean, when has Brian Stelter or Jim Acosta questioned Zucker about his own role? That's the interview I would like to watch, but they won't do it because they follow Zucker's marching orders.
I mean, I remember, and we were friends back then when I was a Bernie surrogate and I was on CNN, and there's this one in particular, there's one memory I'll never forget. I was I think it was a debate. I think it was a Republican debate, and CNN was hosting it, a primary debate, or a town hall or something. And I was at CNN headquarters in New York that night on a panel with Gloria Borger and Anderson Cooper, and I believe not James Carville, the other one. They used to have a thing together. Carville and the other Democratic.
Mary Madeline?
No, the man that he used to work with.
Democratic. I know who you're talking about.
I'm just thinking forgetting his name. And I was at an event for Bernie Sanders as a surrogate in Washington Square Park, in which it was, to note, the largest presidential rally in history. And I remember the only way I could get there, the fastest way I could get to my CNN hit, my segment on this panel, was if I took the subway. And so I took the subway. I was like, they barely had any time to put me in hair and makeup. And I get there, and all we're talking about is Trump. And then they ask me some question about Bernie, and they just laugh him off. And I said, I literally just came from the largest presidential rally in history, and you're laughing off Bernie while you're talking about a man who at that point wasn't even who knows what he was polling at? Like, it was ridiculous. They were just the Trump phenomenon. And, I hate to, everybody's played out that comparison a million times, but it was so visual to me. And then the next day, sitting in a studio, one of those like little small studios that they have at CNN, staring at an empty podium of Donald Trump while Bernie's in the corner with 30,000 people at his next rally in Brooklyn or Long Island City or wherever it was. It seems to me like the ratings are great until the business model gets in the way. And what Bernie had, obviously, he got in the way of the capitalist business model. But then you have Trump that it worked like two things at once: tax cuts for the wealthy and great ratings if we can get him there and make him look like a populist. So I don't know. I mean, the Parler news that came out today was shocking.
What's the Parler news?
So there's a story that came out, and if I had a producer today, I would be able to show this to you, but I'm not that effective. That the Trump campaign organization was offered a stake in Parler, this right-wing media venture, up to 40%. That was their negotiating stake. And it is now under, of course, investigation as we lead into the impeachment. Just illustrating one more business opportunity, pay to play, conflict of interest, whatever you want to list it as.
The Trump campaign,
they didn't take
it.
But they engaged. They engaged in this conversation.
They engaged, but they didn't.
As far as we know, unless there's some reporting that I'm missing, this broke right beforehand.
I'll be interested. Yeah, who reported this? Where
I will pull it up right now. I believe it was BuzzFeed.
I'll look
But yeah, I mean, so as we go into this impeachment, how does this impeachment, other than it being about inciting a coup, how does this impeachment differ from the last one? Like, is there anything that we're going to learn that was not unveiled in the last impeachment of Donald Trump?
Well, it's two different issues. Obviously, they're dealing with a set of facts. But look, this is clearly more emotional this gets to the violence of January 6th, then, we will see the video images of the police officer being, assaulted and caught in that doorway, and the people smashing through the window, and, the powerful testimony about, how the members had to flee literally for their lives and duck, under desks and in the chamber, hearing the sounds of gunshots. It's emotional, powerful stuff. That said, how much do we learn beyond what we already know about the horrific events of that day? Well, we don't know whether we're going to get any witness testimony yet, right?
In general, or just, Trump has always said he's not going to.
For this trial. Here, a couple of starting points. Trump's conduct through the whole thing is horrific. Starting with right after the election and the big lie about the election fraud, and, whipping his people up for weeks, about this mythical election fraud and all the evidence they had, and they had nothing. And it's clear that they had nothing that in any way supported what Trump was publicly saying. So he was lying to his followers because he couldn't accept the fact that he lost. He just couldn't accept it. So this was for psychological reasons, he pulled off this, incredible fraud on his own people by feeding them stuff that just wasn't true. We know what he said that day, but we don't know the full story of what happened that day. And I'm more interested in that, especially since we kind of sort of know the outcome of the trial, right? He's not going to get convicted. And that's a problem right there. Because
so why is that? Like, why?
Because they don't have the votes. It's a
why couldn't we?
A political trial, and that's not where Senate Republicans are.
Because of the numbers needed, but also why? Mitch McConnell 2-3 weeks ago, not even, right, said that he does believe that Trump incited violence. Right. Kevin McCarthy said he didn't. Yeah, this is insanity. This is the Republican Party that's been so good at keeping.
All right, but fine. We can spend all our time talking about bashing the Republicans and how slavish they've been about Donald Trump. We know that. Okay. Yeah. The bottom line is, you can't get a conviction.
Right.
Now, the Justice Department, guidelines for bringing an indictment is you only bring an indictment when you believe you can obtain a conviction. Now, this is a little different, but, it's analogous, right? There's a reason you don't bring charges when you can't, you don't have good faith reason to believe you can win a conviction. It's not about just making yourself feel good that you're doing the right thing in terms of constitutional. It's what's the outcome. The outcome here is disqualification from office so that Donald Trump never has to cast his ugly shadow on the American public again. Right. What is the likely outcome of a trial in which you don't get a conviction? Number one, headlines the next day, Trump acquitted, the last headline I want to read. And number two, you've emboldened him and his supporters so it becomes more likely that Trump will stay with us and could run again for office and be a presence in American political life. So the outcome of this trial is likely to be the exact opposite of what the House managers are trying to achieve. Even though an impeachment for a sitting president doing what he did is entirely justified here by Trump's conduct. There's no excusing Trump's conduct. But if you can't use the impeachment process to achieve the goal you're trying to achieve, then I have serious questions about the advisability of going through this. What I would much more likely see, and which I think would have much more impact on Donald Trump's future and the future of his supporters, is a 9/11 style commission with subpoena power that actually does investigate everything that happens that day, gets into the White House that afternoon with witness testimony from the people inside the White House. What was Trump doing that day? What was he telling his supporters while he's seeing on what was he telling people when he sees on TV the mob invading the Capitol and that Mike Pence has to be escorted out for his own protection? What was he saying? What was he doing? Was he approached about deploying the National Guard or not?
Right.
Did he offer an opinion? Did he weigh in with the Pentagon one way or another? We don't know the answer to that question. If you read the House impeachment manager's brief, after their eloquently stated summation of of the issues at trial, it's all based on press reports. They had no testimony. They had no documents. They had no emails. That's what a 9/11 style commission could do. You make it bipartisan so you have Republican buy-in, keep out the crazies. I don't want Matt Gaetz on there, but I want sane Republicans tethered to reality. You get an unanimous report that says, A, the election fraud claims were a total fraud themselves. B, here's what was going on inside the White House this day. Here's how Trump reacted. Here's how he was responding in real time. That would be very powerful. That would have a long-standing impact, I believe, even on some of his own supporters. That would do more to get Donald Trump out of our political life than this impeachment trial, which is going to be rushed through because the Biden folks don't want a distraction. They've got their own agenda that needs to be dealt with. And that's not excusing Donald Trump. That's not, allowing him to escape accountability. If you know that at the end of the day, you're not going to get a conviction, he's going to escape accountability, right? So this trial is not going to achieve what the people pushing it are hoping to achieve. So that's why I'm deeply ambivalent about this.
What is it going to take to have some sort of 9/11 commission-esque
legislation?
It will. So that's after the impeachment, essentially.
What I'm afraid of is that after this trial, there will be no appetite for that because the appetite will be lessened, right? Because, we've already dealt with that. We had this whole trial. We explored but no, you didn't. This trial, especially if you don't have look, what did they do last week? They said they invited Trump to testify. What's Trump's testimony going to get you? If you had nothing, if you didn't do the investigation, that you could confront him with other witness testimony, with emails, with documents, everything to show him to be the liar that he is, then you just get Trump, spouting off. It was...
And what's strange to me is, I understand that we may not have any witnesses, but Mike Pence, any of the security
let's
staff.
have Mike Pence's testimony.
Hell, any of the congressional members that aren't AOC on her Instagram Live, which was extremely valuable, but, there was a whole house that was under attack, and Mike Pence, who was taken in. What I want to know is, was Trump, as you mentioned, and I'm completely unfamiliar with how this process works, but was he taken to the Situation Room? Was he, when the vice president is literally put at risk, you'd think that they were put into that.
Back to the 9/11. During the 9/11 commission, they interviewed Bush, they interviewed Cheney, they interviewed Rumsfeld, they interviewed Wolfowitz.
They were the heroes, Mike. They were the heroes.
Yeah. Well, all right. But my point is that you can get, if you set up a body, they can get answers to these questions, right? And but this trial isn't going to do it. It's not going to get those answers that I would like to see. So
what do we expect to happen this week? I mean, anything?
God knows. I mean, look, what we're hearing is tomorrow is going to be a debate about the constitutionality question, and then there'll be a vote, and, narrow by 51 votes. There will be at least 51 votes that the procedure is constitutional and it will move forward. And then Wednesday, the House managers will play their videos.
The videos meaning like
the videos of the events of January.
Not the press videos, their internal camera, the security videos, or
well, I
something
mean,
else?
I don't know. We'll see. I think it's going to be a lot of what people have picked up on Facebook and other social media. I mean, we've seen a bunch of them. I suspect they've got some that we haven't seen. So it'll be very, emotional stuff. I mean, the police officers who were, literally, fearful for their lives as this mob overwhelmed them.
Yeah.
I think 140 of them are still suffering injuries from that day. There's been a couple of suicides, one death. I mean, it was horrific for those Capitol police officers. But, analogous to a trial, that's kind of like the victim impact statements you get at sentencing. It doesn't go to the fact. So there'll be a lot of emotion, but are we going to learn anything more beyond? I mean, we know what Trump said. We know how
can anybody try? I mean, moving forward here, this is maybe just flexing like some sort of legal, exercise. It's a legal exercise. But what if one of the officers or their families tried to get somebody convicted for murder or Trump for murder?
Well, I think that you could. I mean, I'm dubious about a criminal incitement case against Trump because the standard outlined by the Supreme Court it's a pretty high bar for incitement. There's got to be a direct connection.
It's got to be like an Aaron Burr moment.
Words and what's that?
It's got to be like Aaron Burr.
It's got to be direct, and nobody that I've talked to, it would be a stretch to try. And especially, Trump's got the out, so we got to go up there peacefully and patriotically, and then say, well, he said peacefully, and the other stuff. Anyway, but what if there was a civil lawsuit from the families of some of those officers?
Right.
Then it becomes preponderance of the evidence. It can be a RICO, racketeering, conspiracy.
Interesting.
You could win, I think, one of the families of the police officers or anybody injured that day could bring a pretty strong civil lawsuit that would bring it in the District of Columbia, and you could get a monster verdict that could, bankrupt Donald Trump for life. And I think if I were Trump, that's what I would be most worried about. And if you want accountability, that would be a pretty powerful and effective way of doing it.
On that note, moving forward, I mean, is there any pathway? There's been a conversation about, and this is obviously something you've written about extensively, about investigating Trump, whether it's the Attorney General of New York, Tish James, or U.S. Attorney pushing in Southern District, or other places that I'm personally not aware of, to dig into the finances of Trump and get a deeper understanding of how.
Well, that's what Cyrus Vance is doing, right?
The DA of New York.
That's his investigation. How much what he's got, how close he is to bringing a case, how much he could get Trump, through that means. We don't know. There's been a lot of people get all excited about it, but let's see. What do you got, Vance? Let's see. I don't know.
And are there other avenues? I mean,
Well, there's the Attorney General in New York, Letitia James, but that's largely civil. I mean, it's unclear to me that she could bring criminal charges, especially if they overlap with what Vance is doing.
But could it uncover something we're not?
Well, I mean, you get the tax records. There could be stuff that Michael Cohen has pointed them to about overinflating assets to get loans. I mean, I don't know how sexy that is, but you could nick him or nick the Trump.
Hola. Welcome to the Nomiki Show. I am Nomiki Konst. Again and again in our history, a trial has sent a message far bigger than the verdict itself. Pause 1 second. Test. We're good. Oof. All right. I'm ready for this COVID thing to be over so I don't have mic issues and camera issues and all these different issues, but looks like it sounds better. All right. Hello and welcome to the Nomiki Show. I am Nomiki Konst, the only one. My grandmother was the first. I'm the second. The only Nomiki Konst. Okay. What is it going to take to hold our elected officials accountable? I mean, like really accountable, not canceled, not fired, just accountable to us for the work that they do that affects, our lives. I've been thinking about this a lot lately, all week, watching the powerful presentations of the House impeachment managers, thinking about all those times Donald Trump skated past consequences for egregious actions that may have, probably did, destroy others. And then in the middle of this thought, literally this morning, wham, Governor Andrew Cuomo faces one more scandal. His administration is caught on a call to state senators, New York state senators, admitting that they withheld the real COVID death count at nursing homes. That might actually be a crime, a real crime. It is certainly a disgrace. On Twitter this morning, the verdict was in. He's done. But really, how many times have we said that before about Governor Cuomo? How many previous scandals did we think were the end of him? His entire inner circle was convicted and some were sentenced to jail, but he still got through it. And of course, we feel the same way about Donald Trump. So what is it that makes these figures invulnerable? We used to call it Teflon, but scouring off the muck of scandal doesn't even capture the way both Trump and Cuomo carry on without seeming consequence. Maybe Trump won't be able to run again after this impeachment trial, but his party still isn't ready to act against him after all that. And maybe Cuomo won't run again, but will he really face judgment for lying about the deaths of some of our most vulnerable? And that's where I keep going, to the question of truth. All of this, Cuomo's new scandal, Trump's impeachment trial, to my mind, this all comes down to one question. Are we ready to reinvent our politics so we tell each other the truth? Or will we just keep rallying enough support to survive by weaving fantasies and creating phony narratives? Politics is supposed to be about resolving our differences so we can proceed together to face our challenges, to help people. God knows those challenges are huge right now. Millions of people are out of work. Millions are putting their kids to bed hungry. Millions don't have health insurance in the middle of a pandemic and are just accumulating debt, whether it's due to COVID-related medical costs or funerals. People don't know where the rent money will come from tomorrow. And Representative Carol Maloney of New York opened a hearing today on President Biden's $1.9 billion aid package with 3 words. People are hurting. Those are realities, and we can't face realities with the politics of lies, misleading your supporters, tricking them into believing things you know are not true. That is demagoguery. It is the foundation of authoritarianism. Concealing the deaths in New York's nursing homes, inciting an attack on the Capitol in which a police officer and 4 attackers died. These are the results of governance by magical thinking. I confess I'm baffled by how Cuomo has been able to move through every major scandal. Just as so many of us are baffled by how much Trump moved through scandal after scandal and now seems on the verge of surviving what in some former time would have been thought as treason? Seriously, treason. They used to hang people for inciting insurrection. Now we banish them to Mar-a-Lago. And it isn't just Trump weaving falsehoods. His enablers say that they can't convict him because the Constitution does not let them, that the Senate does not have the authority to put him on trial. What? Let's be clear, they made this up. They are creating a phony excuse, to avoid telling the truth, which is that they don't want to face the wrath of Trump supporters for convicting their man of what he clearly did. In other words, Republican senators don't want to tell Trump supporters the truth about the lies that Trump told them. We are spiraling down. And at some point, we will have lost so much of our grip on what's real that we won't be able to find our way back. And that is the unvarnished truth. And that is what we have to watch and be concerned about. We have an amazing show for you today. Seriously, it's amazing. It's Fun Friday. Esperanza, Fonseca, and Natalie Shure are back here. And right after the break, we will talk with Lisha Brooks. She's, of course, an actor and a writer and the sister of our late dear friend, Michael Brooks. She's going to tell us about her special plan to honor his memory and his legacy. You may have been watching it so far. She's going to talk with us a little bit more about it. We will be right back after the break. Welcome back to the Nomiki Show. This is that time, guys. I remind you about our amazing book club. It is underway. We just announced that the Nomiki Show book club, which we launched in January of this year, we just partnered with Verso Books. Super excited. Before we go into our Verso book series, this week, you should have a copy of Josh Fox's The Truth Has Changed. We opened up the show talking about truth. This is the time we got to talk about truth. I can't believe we have to talk about truth. But Josh Fox has, of course, explored this through his one-man show, really starting at 9/11. And moving into the Iraq War, into his fights with the oil and gas industry and the misinformation that they spread, really coming from the Andrew Breitbart, Steve Bannon world and into Project Veritas, which actually was banned from Twitter yesterday. So all of this stuff is super relevant to today's world. All these figures are doing all that they can with major resources to disseminate falsehoods and confuse folks so that people don't have a grasp of some verifiably truths that we have in the world. And so he went around the country doing this one-man show, which led into the 2016 election and beyond. And he turned it into a book, and now it's going to go into a film series. And here we are, just about a month and a half after a coup, talking about truth. So this is the book to talk about. We just had this amazing interview with him a couple of days ago that you can go check out right now. Sign up at patreon.com/The Nomiki Show. You will see the 3 categories: 1 book a month, 2 books a month, or if you're kooky like me, 4 books a month. And we have conversations with folks about all these books. And starting next week, we will be partnering up with Verso Books to release books that are coming out right now and doing exclusive interviews with their authors. I don't know if you can get that anywhere else, so go check it out right now. Okay, I am so honored and so humbled to have my friend Lisha Brooks here today joining us for Fun Friday. Lisha is, of course, she's an actor and she's a writer. And she is the sister to our late dear friend, Michael Brooks of The Michael Brooks Show. And she's spearheading the Michael Brooks Legacy Project right now, which, if you haven't checked it out, is this beautiful series. And she's going to tell us a little bit more about it, in which they have conversations about Michael's legacy with some of the best people that he's interviewed, and others too that have been influenced or relate to his legacy. Lisha, thank you so much for joining us. We're really grateful to have you. Oh, you're on mute. I know, we all. It's like how many hours? At least you're not a cat. Oh my God.
I'm used to being in the the controlling seat, so as soon as the roles switch, you're completely helpless. Thanks for having me.
The cat thing to me, just to start off on a light note, how did that even I still can't figure out how that happened.
I was just floored that the fellow lawyers, I must hate that colleague so much that not even this cat moment tickled them. They were just serious. So unfazed. I wonder if maybe this had happened before. I don't know. Yeah. And just the animated eyes racing with panic.
Nothing like a cat in panic.
Yeah.
No, it was I didn't know a filter like that existed. And also like lighten up, guys. It's a funny moment. It was beautiful.
Yeah. I thought he was lucky it was a cat.
Tell me, you could have had a Jeffrey Toobin moment.
Exactly.
So Lisha, I'm so happy you're here today. I'm really grateful that we've gotten to know each other over the last, I guess it's a year now. I met you at our live event in March of 2020. It was our first live event. We just launched the show. We did it. It's our only live event. We did it in Los Angeles, in which Michael came out and was one of our guests on stage and was brilliant as usual. But it was we all thought it was gonna be so much fun, and I was it sold out, and we were people came. It was amazing, but the room was dark because it was Super Tuesday, and Bernie Sanders did not do as well as a lot of people expected. And so, we went backstage. We're like, all right, we've got to make people feel good. But it was hard, man. It was a hard day.
Yeah. I was impressed at how quickly Michael pivoted personally into trying to, similar to the article Matt Karp put out many months later in Jacobin, kind of outlining, victories, what could have been done better, exactly where things went. I felt like Michael was instantaneously kind of mentally doing that and then choosing to lead with, This is a big shift. And I was pretty impressed because I personally was just sitting, and it was all young people, and then the only boomers there were, it's in my experience with the Bernie campaign. I don't know if this is kosher to say or not, but it's most of the boomers that are involved. It's because they need health insurance. It's because they didn't play into the game of corporate, criminal greed, and it was serious stakes. And I remember just looking down the row at everyone's face and just thinking this is so personal and so scary.
It was, I've never done a live event like that before, where we go in feeling super excited and, you're just you could feel people processing things on stage. It's like being in a newsroom when a live event happens in which nobody's ever experienced, whether it's a pandemic or a terrorist attack or a death or something profound like that. And, he, as always, was able to just, I don't know, he had something in his spirit, his personality that just was able to kind of take the perspective out of it. And I think he just recognized, as a figure in media, as a figure on stage, was a guiding force. Even when you're he and so many others, myself included, had spent 5 years campaigning for Bernie and putting so much hope into him. And at that point, I think we all thought that he was doing really well, and just to be shocked like that. So it was nice to have him there.
Yeah.
So tell us this legacy project. It's been, Michael passed in July 20th, if I recall.
It's going up on 7 months. This 20th, this February 20th.
February 20th. It'll be 7 months. And you have, he had this very popular channel on YouTube and, of course, on Patreon and podcast form. And he was at Jacobin and had all these different projects underway. How did you decide to put this together?
Well, it's a bit all over the place in terms of like you mentioned, there was a lot going on. I think kind of like the first step, I'll try and make this as concise and quick, but kind of the first step was, kind of a conversation between Matt, David, and I about how to like best transition out of, doing, the Oprah Winfrey show without Oprah. That's the lamest example I could come up with, but you know what I mean? It was this like very challenging thing because Michael's set of politics and analysis and humor and relationships were very specific to Michael, and no one can really do Michael's show in lieu of Michael. And we wanted to figure out a nice transition where we could set up, give Matt and David the platform and space to really create a show that was 100% their own, and they could really dig in and kind of continue a lot of the work that they were doing with Michael, but not under the weight of it's really heavy that that music comes on, the graphic comes on, it's his name, it's quite a responsibility. And so that was kind of part of, and that worked out really beautifully. And you guys should definitely check out their work. They're doing a really great job. And then the legacy part of it was how do we, Michael's passing brought a lot of media attention, a lot of new people wanting to learn about him and learn about his work and who he was. And people want to know his story. And his story as a young person growing up in America is a little bit of it's both kind of a lot of people's stories, and it's also a bit of an unusual story. And I want to do work that I want to make a documentary film, and I'm actually starting my own show about his life called The Brief and Wondrous Life of Michael Brooks, to kind of, honor and celebrate Michael, the person. And then the tribute series that you mentioned is a series of roundtable discussions that Professor Russell Spriglia, friend of Michael's, kind of had the vision to do. And he was thinking it'd be one academic weekend. And I called him. I was like, I don't think anyone wants me on Zoom for 48 hours, but what if we, make this a weekly event? And we're hoping that has, I jokingly refer to it as like socialist Davos. I hope that has an ongoing, like we can all gather and think about global solidarity. And I just always have Michael's voice ringing in my head. Just every person should just have dignity and respect. And, I feel like that was really at the core of his philosophy and his project. So all of these different moving pieces, and everyone can go and check out the Patreon. So I'm not just blabbing on and on.
Those photos, man.
Yeah. Little Michael.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So, I mean, can I talk to you a little bit about, if you're comfortable with it, just sort of Michael's growth in politics, like how he, I know you're going to touch on this with The Brief and Wondrous Life of Michael Brooks, which is just so beautiful. I love that. But I mean, as his sister, I was watching him since he started the Majority Report and knew him through many of those years, and just his evolution. He was just so sharp. Last year of his life, like he was just so sharp and so focused, and at the same time, like spiritual. It was this beautiful kind of. You don't see a lot of that in this space. I mean, it's a really rough space to be in, to be honest. I mean, when you're in media, the pace is so insane. You don't have a lot of time to think and process, let alone read. Just personally, like that's why this idea of the book club is important to me, because I want to spend more time going deeper into work. And he just always, every time I talked to him, I just felt like he was always going deeper into work, deeper into his self, and keeping up with the fucking insane news cycle that we're living in, and keeping up with the show, which, pulling back the curtain a little bit, it's really hard. It's really, really hard. And yet he found this balance to me. And I'm sure, he was nowhere near where he wanted to go with it. But among folks that I know in this space, he handled it with a lot of grace. I mean, especially in the last year, I think, seeing how he came about.
Yeah. Part of this is like challenging to talk about. I probably won't get into because that I think he did work too hard and he didn't, he may be, I talked to a blood specialist the other day because I share one of the genetic mutations that Michael had, which we didn't really know about as a family, until that was passing. That
led to his passing, right?
That's mostly, it's like you analyze the body and you try and figure out what caused this blood clot, and then they found these 2 genetic mutations. But to veer away from that, because that's a whole other topic, I was talking to a blood specialist, which, one second, I talked to him on Zoom for 15 minutes. I have good health insurance. I'm very lucky. I get it through the Writers Guild of my union. The consultation before insurance was, I think, $687 for 15 minutes of talking to the doctor. And then after insurance, it was around $240. I'm in a position where this isn't going to like derail me. I'm not going to be able to make rent, but I was just appalled by that. So I just had to say that because I was just so livid that that's the reality of having good insurance. Anyhow, with Michael, this was genuine for him. And, Michael had a really big ego, really big ambitions. I don't want to paint a saintly-like picture. He was very human. I think it's important to talk about that because I think as soon as you move into the, saint so-and-so, then you take away their humanity and it makes it, less accessible and real. And I don't want to do that. But I will say is that this was very authentic for Michael. He was always reading. That, even if he wasn't doing this, even if Michael worked at a gasoline station or at a bookstore, did something completely, had a more private life. I think his personality was always that he was just reading and ingesting the news and constantly consuming books. And that had it had everything to do with what he did. And it was wonderful that that was his career and he was able to do it full time, but it was also just what he did.
I mean, but it was something like, I don't know, something about the last year. I saw a different, there was like a switch.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think, it's like weird because now it's like so pivotal, but I feel like, I think when you grow up and you have a lot of shame around like poverty or your circumstances, sometimes when you gain success, you feel more comfortable talking about that. And I think being honest about the things that you used to hold as shame, I think it is freeing. And I don't think that's the only thing that was going on, but I do think Michael had a transition where he went from kind of commenting on things, and then he had started to publicly make things personal and speak out about that. And I think, at least with my own experience around that, it is a huge relief. It's like you're no longer like kind of constantly pretending or code switching or and our society has changed. I mean, before and after Bernie, the way we talk about class, the way people acknowledge the just I even when I look back at like Sex and the City or Entourage or these like big HBO shows from like not that long ago, it's like the idea of like this illusion around like whatever, take that example as you will. But like, I just feel like there's been such a huge shift with people kind of getting more in touch with the reality of what's happening here in this country. It
was like a pseudo normalcy that was not, I mean, first time I moved to New York, I remember like thinking, wait, how did all these Friends people live in these ginormous apartments? Even with
the
like
paleontologist and the part-time employee at Ralph Lauren have the same living environment. Yeah.
But I mean, it's like such a conscious thing. It's like it permeates every single aspect of our society to almost trick people into thinking that, not only is it achievable to like live this magnificent New York lifestyle where you're buying, $1,000 Manolo Blahniks with a, columnist salary in the middle of a media crisis, but also like that you can do it and others are doing it, and if you're not doing it, then there's a shame that associated with it in which it's personalized. And I think he was able to kind of grasp that in a way that was different than most.
Yeah.
Discuss it.
Yeah. it's funky stuff. And then you also like, now I feel like the switch side of it too is that at the same time, you also, and Michael did a really beautiful job of this, it's like there's a really big difference of growing up homeless or like never, like not having any parents in your life and being on your own, or being like housing, what's the word I'm looking for now? Food and insecure. Michael was really good at like not like dramatizing or being like, like my sobs, he was just very like, I have a relationship to this because I went through these things compared to like a lot of other circumstances. I was relatively, lucky and whatever. And I appreciated kind of like how he held that, because I feel like that's the flip side of it too. Like the poverty porn of like, the performativeness, and that I think he kind of also was really turned off by that. So I really appreciated when I would watch him on his live streams on the show, personalized stuff. I was like, oh, this is just right. Kind of acknowledging, telling your personal way in, and not overshadowing what you're covering by your own, narration.
Well, because the truth is it's way more common than people, like the way that sometimes it's illustrated in the news when someone comes out that, achieves success and says, well, I was actually, experienced XYZ. It's like you said, it's very performative. There's like a porn aspect to it. It's almost like a monetization aspect to it. Or how do we expand on this and make this a thing, when the truth is the majority of people have, if you are coming from a working class household, have faced some form of insecurity in your life, and it's just going to get worse.
Right.
Lisha, if you're comfortable talking about this, like what was Michael working on, moving forward? What was he thinking about? And yeah.
I mean, that's like such a large question, and there's so many people who can speak to, like I can't scratch the surface of what him and Professor Richard Wolff are working on together, or what, like there's so many different categories. I do know one thing he and I spoke about a lot, was just, and I think he would have been like so bummed by what's happened this past couple of months with all this infighting and drama, but he just really wanted to normalize being on the left, kind of get rid of all of these different like subcultures, categories. That was just, I think he talked to me at least, and I'm sure Matt and David and other folks would have different insight, but he talked to me about just like wanting TMBS to like maybe not even 100% be like focused on politics, and like he was really trying to like expand. I think he was just very aware of just like how the right just had such a chokehold on the normal. And that's not to like, glorify dysfunction or ugly. I'm not like trying to use normal as like a caveat for ugly societal problems. I'm just saying like the accessibility was just something that was like, he was really aware of. And I don't know. I mean, the last conversation we had was about 14 hours before he died. We FaceTimed. He seemed completely fine. I mean, he was like a little tired. And I had been to a protest, and I was just talking to him. I was like, what happens after this? What's the next strategy? Like, the uprising's kind of dying down. The police have kind of like figured out their gridlock on this. Like, what is it stopping commerce anymore? Is it what? And he was like, yeah, I don't know. We have to figure out the next thing. This is kind of the end of this, but I had no idea he was going to die the next day.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, in terms of the legacy project, can you talk a little bit about what you've touched on with this project? Who's appeared? Who's in the works?
Yeah. So, the legacy project is kind of like the overarching, like, it's kind of like what, when someone passes away, it's very obvious what to do with their like personal social media or what, it kind of just like becomes like a tune, it's like it's done. Like they've passed, it's private. But with Michael and TMBS and the amount of global community that he had built up, and the amount of kind of virtual grieving, it felt like creating a foundation or something in his honor felt important. And then it kind of became obvious that he had already created it. He had built a digital community. And then it's like, how do you, it's very complicated stuff. It's like, how do you honor someone and their work, stay relevant, not ever like use his image for like some agenda or some purpose that isn't in line with what he was about, which right now is easy to do because it's like the people who are closest to him do have that access and ability. It's kind of thinking about like if it goes long term or if things, whatever, that's a whole other thing. But the tribute series, which I think is what you're asking about, is available on the TMBS YouTube. I think it's going to end up being about a 14-part series. There's 3 more that will be released publicly. The patrons get early access to the panels, and we've really ran the gamut of different topics. We started with Dr. Cornel West and Slavoj Žižek going back and forth about the future of the left, and also chatting about Michael. It's a really wonderful. Yeah, you guys are on it. There's a playlist, and it has all of the, you can see Waz Lambre and Anna Kasparian were on. Nomiki hosted honestly, I really want everyone to check it out. It's on sex and gender on the left, and it was such a great discussion.
So good. I
need to start clipping a lot of them. I know people don't always watch the full discussion. We have a lot of clipping to do. But they're just kind of various topics, and some of them are more like quite literally aligned in parts of Michael's project and work, and kind of we just had one with Jeremy Johnson, Brent Cooper, and good friend of and advisor of Michael's, Ben Beish, and they kind of very literally sort of looked at one of his last live streams and kind of used that as a jumping off point to continue discussing some stuff that he had put out maybe about 4 days before his passing. And then some of them are like, like the sex and gender one. Michael obviously wasn't like particularly like focused on that in his work. That wasn't so much a part of his project, but in terms of like being really like deeply interested in supporting people globally and not letting, identity get in the way of truly supporting folks are actually, in my mind, actually being a feminist and what that means in terms of paying people.
Yes.
Was absolutely part of his project. So it was really wonderful to thank you for hosting. You did a beautiful job with that.
Thank you. I mean, first off, thank you for thinking about it and thinking of me. I mean, what I really appreciate about that is even in my own personal conversations with Michael about there were some moments where we didn't always agree on things, and it was always intellectual. It was never a personal thing. It was just sort of an intellectual exercise where he even broke I had to think about things in a different perspective. And these are really tough questions, like the Elizabeth Warren question, for instance. Like, was she, I love, you and I are both
I don't like, but anyways, sorry to interrupt.
No, I mean, I always thought that Joe Biden was the biggest threat to Bernie Sanders. And for some reason, I actually didn't feel like Warren was dividing the left as much as many felt. But it was an emotional experience, and I think a lot of people were wrapped up in it. So we kind of went back and forth on it a few times. But, and I obviously came at it from a perspective of being a woman and like, look, there are all these other people who are stealing votes from Bernie, and we're not. But it was like part political, part and just your own experience. But he was very open to having those conversations.
Yeah. I think for Michael, it's just that he just was really dogmatic about analysis. Like it really genuinely had nothing to do with Elizabeth Warren being a woman. It was the fact that she was trying to run in this ultra progressive lane, and it just wasn't adding up what she was saying versus what she was doing. The whole Bernie and I are in this together, and the attack, it wasn't in line with the, and I'm not saying that Michael was some sort of oh, this is good. And, it's just, he actually just really was pushing for a change in this country. And he did not see Elizabeth Warren being authentic in that. I've also probably spent a lot of time arguing with Michael. The annoying thing is that he usually was right, and it's actually, almost always was right. But our last conversation, we almost started to kind of get into a fight about something. I can't remember. We were kind of like knocking heads. And then he said, like, and I think I've said this before on YouTube somewhere, but I'll say it again. And he said, like, well, do you want me to explain it to you or not? And I said, and I was about to, like, you'd be like, and then I thought about it for like 1 second, and I was like, no, I actually do want you to explain it to me, because I think you are probably right about this, but I'm missing a beat. And, he explained whatever it was and his like reason for why he thought that, and X, Y, and Z based on, facts. And I was like,
or history or something. I mean,
or history, yeah.
That was like the great thing about having debates with him. And it didn't, honestly, I don't think I debated him that often. I mean, it's like debating, I rarely debate Sam. I rarely debate Michael. I think there's a basis for our political theory. Like, it's coming from some sort of basis, and we don't always agree on everything, and we have different personalities. But that one was interesting to me because his thoughts were based in a very like respectable perspective. Mine was based on gender and like political numbers game. His was based on like, well, this is what the left should be if I'm saying this right. And she's sort of like tainting that. But I was like, but it's not real. And it was like a brand.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah. I mean, I think for him, it was just like, do we need to, I think he saw her as part of the like diversifying the ruling class, like, shiny, women stay in your place. One of you is up there representing you.
Exactly.
Diaspora.
Which is right. Also, very true.
Yeah. And in LA, working in entertainment, I mean, I was oftentimes throughout all this, like the idea of like not being with Warren was like, oh my God, like, what do you like go home and like sign up to be like declitterized? Like, what's wrong? It was like unthinkable. Like, what kind of self-hating, I joke like the secret like Taliban wives of the Bernie brothers. Like, just like absolutely unthinkable.
You need a voice for that, though. You got to do a voice. Yeah.
Oh, the impersonation.
Well, not of the Taliban wives, of the elite
we'll
class.
Save that for Michael.
The like the Hollywood elites telling you these things. Like,
I mean, it's not even. It wasn't even. The thing that I think people don't even sometimes realize on the Bernie side of it is a lot of it was like, there's this like really beat up car on my block that's covered in Pete Buttigieg stickers.
Oh my God.
It's not like necessarily like always, it's like more just like PMC values, even if you're like barely clinging on to having a good income, or even if you're working these kind of like, salaried, highly credentialed jobs, but you're still getting paid nothing. Right. But you're in line with the right kind of feminism and the right kind of,
identity,
status, identity signaling.
Don't worry. Just tell that guy that Pete Buttigieg will take care of all transportation for everybody. So that
I literally like can't. I'm worried now. People are gonna know where I live because I feel like this must be an outlier. But I'm always just like, I look at that car. I'm just like, what is happening? Like, what is
just
this?
Leave a little note.
It never ceases to amaze me. No, I think it's him.
Yeah. It's actually Pete Buttigieg's mom.
Yeah. She was evicted during the Wi-Fi and the sewer free house zoning situation.
A horrible thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Lisha, I love having conversations with you. If you're open to it, I'd love to have you back on and we could talk a little bit more about feminism. I know you have a lot of thoughts and you have your own political perspective, but I feel like this was a really great opportunity for everybody to kind of learn about what's happening with Michael's legacy and what you're doing to honor his work. And it's beautiful. And also it's like you have your own career and life and now you've been putting Michael's legacy, equally as important in your life in terms of time. So yeah. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Can I say one last thing?
Of course.
I listen to a lot of Democracy Now! She's like, you have 3 seconds. Michael and I had a lot of plans to collaborate together, and we kind of worked in parallel career, paths. And I think Michael was trying to figure out how to make something entirely of his own on his own grounds and make it more mainstream. And I've spent a lot of time, trying to figure out how to make things that you are working with Netflix or Disney or whatever, and trying to, pull what's possible in those realms. And we always planned on collaborating on films or documentaries. And Michael was really pushing me to start my own podcast. So some of this is kind of like my last way of ever getting to in any way collaborate with my brother. So it's maybe in some ways like it's like something that I always thought was going to happen, and now it's happening in this really challenging way. But it feels like my last chance to like make it happen. So I'm grateful for the wonderful fans and friends and community that he built that is supporting that. And in some ways it feels like kind of like a gift from him. So, yeah.
We love Michael so much. I mean, personally, he made such a big impact on my life. I mean, he not only were we friends before I ran for office and then would go on his show and Majority Report, but he like showed up to everything in the middle of the worst winter in New York, campaigning for me and believing in me and having conversations and then afterwards showing up for so many different candidates and having them on his show and just giving people a chance and, practicing what he preached on the ground. And that's not happening enough in media just in general, and definitely not enough in this media space that we live in. And so I thank you. Just thank you for living this out and gifting his fans and the world now that so many people, as you mentioned at the top, learned about Michael, and unfortunately with his passing being such a big story, but they're learning about him now. And so, we're just grateful to you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me on the show. And just trying to get smarter and build better analysis now that Michael's gone. So also, on my own path, I definitely do not know everything by any means. Feel like every day I'm expanding what I knew and what I thought. So if I said anything insane over the last 20 minutes, forgive me. We're all growing, and I might have a completely different take tomorrow.
This is Femme Friday. That was like a very gendered thing to say. You are brilliant. What would Michael do? Would Michael ever say that? No,
but Michael did like authentically, like he was more of an expert in some of it. You know what I mean? Like there are the things I think are more expertise, and I feel like it's just been like an unusual situation where like, I've said this before too. It's like I feel like I kind of like went on this show to kind of hold my brother's space, and I immediately was like in the space where everyone thought I was like way smarter and way stupider than I am. And I literally like sometimes at the beginning of the week will listen to something or read something, by the end of the week have like like right now I'm like really getting deep into the difference of like direct action and like helping a cause versus like charity, just like the inner workings of like virtue signaling versus actually spreading awareness, like I'm just trying to get like cleaner on these things. I feel like Michael was just innately just I don't know, just had like really sharp analysis on all of it.
Well, it was his life's work, so don't beat yourself up.
Oh,
we're all learning.
Totally.
Lisha Brooks, we love you. Come back on.
Great. Yeah,
let's talk politics together.
Okay, sorry. No, that was a Femme Friday. That would have been the
oh my God, I'm sorry. No, you're sorry. I'm sorry.
Thank you for having me. Sorry that I came on. Okay. All right. I'll leave.
Dorsey's laughing.
Okay, good.
All right, thanks, Lisha Brooks.
All right, bye.
We'll be right back with Natalie Shure and Esperanza Fonseca to talk about today's news. You're watching Femme Friday on the majority. Oh my God, I can't believe I just said that. On the Nomiki show. Some stuff and it's a Majority Report on it. All right, you're watching the Nomiki show. I just gave a shout out to another show, Very Femme Friday. Thank you all. We'll be right back with Natalie Shure and Esperanza Fonseca. Oh my God, what the heck? Oh my God. Hello, welcome back to the Nomiki Show. I don't know how many of you guys follow these CBD companies, but I have been consuming CBD for a while now, and Sunset Lake CBD is my favorite by far. You may know about it through the Majority Report, which we mentioned at the top. Sunset Lake CBD is a farmer-owned company, and they ship craft CBD products directly from their small little farm to your door. I received an amazing shipment over the holidays. I'm going to tell you about it in a second, but I want you guys to know that they offer all different types of products. They offer tinctures, gummies, salves, and coffee, like actual coffee with CBD in it, all designed to help you with stress, aches, pains. I do a lot of walking. I do a lot of sitting. I do a lot of yoga. I have a lot of stress. I am not joking. It has helped me in ways that I will tell you about in a second. They are originally from, they have a dairy farm that was originally part of the Ben & Jerry's, like Bernie Ben & Jerry's in Vermont. And they decided to diversify and grow premium hemp from that farm. So they went from a dairy farm to a hemp farm. Customers support sustainable agriculture that enhances these rural economies that we all fight for and creates meaningful employment in that community. Their minimum wage is automatically at $15 an hour. Their employees own the majority of the company, and they support independent media like our show, like the David Pakman Show, like the Majority Report. So I got a package in the winter, and it was a fast fave in our family, like in our entire household. Let's start off with the gummies. I took a couple of gummies to go to sleep, and I have a lot of sleeping issues. I'm probably sharing a little bit too much, but I have insomnia, chronic insomnia, and truthfully, like I do these own tinctures on my own. I'll put like valerian and all melatonin, all these things together to help me go to sleep. I took a couple gummies. I had the deepest sleep of my life. Let me just tell you how much I have an issue with sleeping. I got a monitor on my one of these wrist monitors to see how my sleep is. It'll show you how much of your sleep has been interrupted. Did you toss and turn? Did you wake up? With the gummies, my sleep has gone almost entirely interrupted. I've had more deeper sleep, all because of these CBD gummies. They also have this amazing tincture, which Dorsey, I think you've been using some of the products as well. Do you want to tune in here?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, I absolutely love the tincture. Have a couple droppers of that before bed, and it gives me a good restful sleep. I usually tried to go to sleep with the other stuff, the not CBD stuff, and of course it put me to sleep, but like it would always just knock me out, and I never had good restful sleep. And this stuff is amazing. And it's funny about the coffee. My partner is a huge coffee snob, and we got some of the coffee, and I tried to get her to try it, and she finally tried it and she loved it. So it's actually good tasting coffee, and gives you a nice chill day with that coffee buzz.
Yeah, my mom, we had some coffee, and then she ended up using it all, as well as the gummies. I'm just gonna say, like, if you can't keep something in your house, like I tried to hide the gummies. I also am addicted to the gummies, so I started just like popping them in the middle of the day and chilling out because I am high like octane all the time. But she also used all of the coffee. And now they have this fudge. I don't know if you've heard about the fudge, Dorsey, but they have a new chocolate fudge, which is perfect for Valentine's. So I'm going to break that open probably on a Sunday. That's Valentine's Day. Yeah, I'm going to break it open to chill out instead of having my 2 glasses of wine. Oh, that was the other thing. I didn't mention this. I did dry January. And so this was amazing because like I will drink wine just to take the edge off at the end of the day. And this was a perfect way for me to do so. So go check out Sunset Lake CBD. We have a promo offer. If you sign up and use the promo code NOMI, yes, as an NOMI, you get 20% off of your entire order. That's at sunsetlakecbd.com. The information's in the info section. If you want to go straight to the website, it's sunsetlakecbd.com. Promo code NOMI, 20% off the order. That's a huge, huge deal. All right, we'll be right back in 2 seconds with Esperanza Fonseca and Natalie Shure. Hello, welcome back to the Nomiki Show. I'm excited to have our recurring guests for Femme Friday. We have Esperanza Fonseca. She has been on the show before. She is an organizer. She is a member of Affirm. She's a labor and policy organizer, and Affirm is a transnational feminist organization. Thank you for joining us, Esperanza. And we have Natalie Shure, who is a writer, and she's head of research for Adam Maroon's Everything. She's appeared in BuzzFeed, The Atlantic, The Nation, In These Times, Jacobin, blah, blah, blah. You've read her. She's amazing. You can also see her on Twitter. She writes all the time. Thank you all for joining us today, and thanks for sticking around because we've had a crazy show. Lots of news. All right, so I want to start off with something that's not necessarily related directly to Femme Friday, but is related to the political world that we may be evolving into. We start off the show talking about like how truth has changed, how truth is being disseminated in different ways, and Steve Bannon has been a big part of this. There was a video I watched yesterday with Steve Bannon and the pillow guy, Mike Lindell. And I know this sounds funny, but I play it because they're putting a lot of energy into this guy. And if he's appearing on Steve Bannon's show, my theory is it's like one of their next bets. Like they're scrambling to figure out who's the next Trump, how are we going to continue this legacy. Can we play that clip real quick?
Anybody gets involved on the national political stage, what's happened. So I think we've got a couple of pictures and clips we want to show at the very beginning. I'd like you to respond to those so then we can kind of get into the film and people can understand this beatdown you're getting from the mainstream media and the beatdown you're getting from the big tech oligarchs. Can we show the first picture?
Yeah. Now this picture here, everyone's got to realize I knew nothing. I'm sorry, start that over. I'll just keep talking. Okay. So what you're seeing here is a picture of the president before he was president. This is the summer.
Anybody gets involved, we call a pretty tough interview.
Okay, so I'm
really, even with that intensity.
Just so you all get what just happened. Mike Lindell did not understand how live media works, which we understand really well. And this is the guy who's like having a effing public meltdown and who's like Donald Trump's like last hope, I guess. He's like the last advisor, the last person defending him. But seeing him pair up with Steve Bannon gave me a little bit of a concern in terms of like, this is not going away anytime soon. Natalie, I know you're following this pretty closely. You're following what's happening in the fascistic leaning world. Where do you think it goes from here?
Well, I mean, it's good that there aren't many people publicly sticking by Trump at this point. I mean, I think that, whether or not they would has less to do with their conscience and more to do with how politically useful they think it is. And so I do think it's a good thing that people don't find it politically useful right now. I mean, I think that that's the bare minimum of what Democrats and anyone who's opposed to Trump should be shooting for right now. But you are right that the fact that he's, that Lindell and to some degree Trump as well, and he does still have a sizable base, if not, allies within the actual political class. I think that the fact that Bannon might be enjoying some, resurgent credibility among those people is a concern. I think that Bannon is very closely related to the alt-right, which is a faction of the Republican Party and the right overall that wouldn't have as much power as it does if it weren't for the fact that this is a party that is, seeking unfettered oligarchy as its sole goal, which isn't a very popular thing. And so as a result, I think that they do lean very hard into things like racism and nationalism, which gives these people more power than they ever should have.
And pseudo-populism too, right, Esperanza? I mean, Steve Bannon has, across the world, pushed forward a pseudo-populism on the right that has tried to, pull some folks in the working class around the world, depending on what the geopolitical situation in those countries are. But they've won seats, they've won presidencies, they've won positions in power globally. And as much as we mock at, this pillow guy, the reality is we mock Donald Trump too. So, for us as a working class, like, how do we make sure that we keep pressure on Biden, but also understand what's happening on the right now that we've seen a taste of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think that once again, it's really important for us to consider ourselves to be anti-fascist, that we name these people for what they are. They are fascists. They're not fascists of the 1930s variety, but they're fascists of, the contemporary world. And so I think it is important that part of our community self-defense against fascism is to deplatform fascists, deplatform their leaders. That includes Steve Bannon and everyone that they're associated with. However, at the same time, I think we also need to be careful about falling into this trap in believing that fascism and what, some people might call Trumpism, which I personally don't like that term because I think it blames him when it ignores that, there is a whole fascistic movement behind him. And I think we need to recognize that it's not going away. Fascist upsurges don't just happen randomly. They're connected to economic crises. And so we need to look at what's going on beneath the surface.
So meanwhile, and I couldn't agree more. Like there's a tie. I mean, obviously racism exists, sexism exists, misogyny is something that's just always present. But when there are these upsurges, the meaning behind them and sometimes the excuse to go to them is much stronger. Meanwhile, this week in Alabama, Amazon workers are organizing a vote. Doesn't happen immediately. This is, after a trend of a presidential campaign, Bernie Sanders pushing back against Amazon workers who've organized in New York and other parts of the country in reaction to how Amazon has treated workers in the middle of a pandemic. Let's play this clip with labor reporter Kim Kelly, who frequents the show as well.
Every worker needs a union, but workers here really need a union. I talked to one of the first people who made one of those original calls to RWDSU and asked them to get involved. And he just said, I feel like it's my job to make things better. Like, we deserve better, and I want to do what I can to help us get there. And, Alex Press had a really great article in the New Republic the other day just about the deeper labor history in Bessemer, because Bessemer is a union town, and that's a rarity in a state that's, as blood red and Republican led, and I'm not trying to rhyme, and right to work in a right to work state in Alabama. Like, this is the kind of place that Bezos runs to. He got ran out of Queens. Queens didn't want him. So they thought, what are the kind of places where a plant like that, where a facility like this would be welcome, where we can bring good jobs and operate with zero actual oversight? And it's places like Bessemer, Alabama, which is an impoverished town. It's predominantly Black. There's a crime problem. There are very few resources. There are very few options for folks here. Amazon likes to present itself as the best game in town. But like you mentioned, there's already this history of organizing. There are other unionized warehouses and poultry plants in the area where workers are making more money than they make at Amazon. Like, there is a precedent here. And, it could have you could say it could have happened anywhere, but I don't know, it does feel like a particularly special place for it to be kicking off, because if workers here in Bessemer, Alabama can pull this off, that means workers anywhere in the country can.
Mm-hmm.
Once this first domino falls, it's anybody's game.
What do you think, Esperanza? Is this a sign that this could happen anywhere and that it's happening fast enough? I mean, this is such a monopoly. This is such a huge company that if they fail in one region, or, I mean, even if they do unionize, there might be a whole other fight that comes forward in the coming months and weeks. But is this something that can be duplicated across other parts of the South that might have some labor background or not?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that, again, sort of back to the earlier question, the best defense against fascism is an organized working class, right? And so this is part of what we need to be doing to fight fascism, right? Organizing the working class in our neighborhoods, in our workplaces, et cetera. However, at the same time, a lot of what I've noticed within the labor movement is that we tend to go for these like big fish, right? Like Amazon, Walmart, et cetera. And sometimes when we have not built our forces enough by frying the little fish, it can be hard to win the big fish. And so I am optimistic that they will win their union. I hope they win their union. But I think that we need to understand that with labor organizing and all organizing, we are going to experience some failure. The point is we have to learn from that and continue building momentum from that. And eventually we will win big and we will win for the working class.
Natalie, just pivoting a little bit. I mean, we're in a new administration, and Jeff Bezos has stepped down from his leadership role. Not entirely. He's going to be on the board. He'll still be involved, of course. But they have faced some setback even under the Trump administration. Now you're going to have a new, National Labor Relations Board. There's a new presidency in which, who knows? I mean, maybe he will lean more worker focused, given the fact that we're in a pandemic and a global economic crisis. But who's to say? I mean, do you think that there's an opportunity here to kind of use this disgusting Amazon, because they have been pressuring workers, they've been intimidating workers, they've been buying ads. I mean, it is a bad campaign. It looks bad for Amazon. Do you think there's a way for progressives and organizers to push back and get Biden to take a more active role? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. There's always a way to push back, right? And the answer of how to push back, as Esperanza said, is the same under, Biden or any other president. I think that, it might be more difficult or less difficult depending on some of the political factors that you mentioned, but ultimately this is going to be a push that has to come from an organized workforce. It's going to have to come from below. So that's going to be the same answer, irrespective of what the political conditions are at the top. And I think that the best we can hope for is, will it get a bit easier for them? And, I think the answer is it's not easy. This is an immensely difficult thing in any circumstance. I do hope it does get somewhat easier, but I don't want to suggest that this is an easy thing. It's something that, we understand how these things work. We understand that this needs to come from workers, but it's difficult to do. And I really hope that they have a lot of solidarity on their side.
And, we're covering this every day on the show pretty regularly, so we'll see as these votes roll out. But yeah, they're spending a lot of money on ads, on intimidation, on setting meetings, on trying to block votes from happening by mail, if that doesn't sound familiar, but hoping that they come through with a win. And then they're going to have a whole other set of fights. So we'll see. Before we wrap up, I want to talk about the $15 minimum wage, because the fact that this is even being debated is like disgusting to me at this stage, when the fight for 15 has been going on for a decade. And in my opinion, 15 anywhere, I mean, nobody can survive off of $15 minimum wage and live in a 1-bedroom apartment in this country. That is a report that has been published by conservative outlets as well as, more mainstream outlets, meaning Wall Street Journal, National Review, et cetera. So why would someone like Kirsten Sinema or Joe Manchin be opposed to the $15 minimum wage? That's the big question if it's going to, go through Congress. Well, it turns out that wasn't always the case. Let's play this clip of Senator Kirsten Sinema from Arizona, a right-to-work state. Oh, it's not a clip, excuse me. This is a tweet, excuse me. From 2014, Kirsten Sinema says a full-time minimum wage earner makes less than $16,000 a year. This one's a no-brainer. Tell Congress to raise the wage. I mean, this is like, I don't know. I can't believe we're sitting in this place right now where Kirsten Sinema, who ran as a progressive when she was in the legislature, she was the most progressive member of the state legislature in Arizona, is now lining up to be the most conservative, if second most conservative, or if not the most conservative member of the Senate. What can we, like, where do we go from here? Why is there not a bigger uproar about this? Esperanza, like, what? All this work, save our Senate. Like, John Ossoff agrees with us. What?
Yeah. I mean, Nomiki, this is why I think that having a real left on this country, not a left that is beholden to a party of big capital like the Democratic Party, is so important, because what we see is that people start off progressive. They make these promises, and then over time, they become more and more beholden to big capital. And so once again, I think that, trusting these politicians to do the right thing is not our job. Our job is to organize workers, period, in our neighborhoods, in our workplaces, etc. Ultimately, wages and the minimum wage, like I said last time, is determined by one thing, and that is class struggle. We have to organize ourselves so that we can tip the odds of that struggle in our favor. And whatever some, politician says, whatever they go back on won't matter, because our power is organized and it is stable and it is cemented.
Natalie, I mean, like, what infuriates me the most about this is when you hear politicians like this say, well, it's because my district is conservative, or it's because I live in Arizona. And, you just had Mark Kelly, who's by no means progressive at all. He's not, he like quickly adjusted from being like another holdout senator to lining up with the majority of centrist Democrats. Like, this excuse, I just don't see it working anymore, especially since Arizona turned blue. But I mean, do you think that, like, she's young, she has a career ahead of her? Like, why? What's your judgment here?
I mean, I think that the $15 minimum wage is one of those rare issues where trying to pressure and embarrass politicians solely through, control and manipulation of the discourse and through media is effective. I do think, obviously, an organized working class is how we're going to win justice ultimately. And it is, the best way toward it. It's going to be what gets them the best deal. And I think that we should also, in that same vein, remember that $15 is an important minimum wage, but it's not a living wage. And since that demand kind of, coalesced over the past couple of years, $15 is worth a lot less now. So, it's not as good as what an organized militant working class would get for themselves. But the campaign is fairly popular, as far as I understand. I mean, it's, shocking that there are any Democratic holdouts. I think even, conservative districts, individual conservatives aren't necessarily against minimum wage. Obviously, capital and business owners are. But, the idea that, my constituents, well, your constituents are the people who live and vote in your district, and those aren't the people that are opposing this thing. But, the Fight for 15 campaign, what I was saying initially, has largely been waged through the media. There have been some very important workers involved, don't get me wrong, but it's not, a collective organizing campaign in the same way that, the Amazon fight is. It's been, very much waged through media and, through discourse. And so I think that it has been a model that we've been able to see. It has worked in some unlikely places. Florida famously just passed a $15 minimum wage. So I think that this is, one of those issues where some pressure from the middle or top is, more useful than it is for certain other issues. So I guess that's, all we can do at this point. As for Kirsten Sinema, and how she went from being a Green Party activist to one of the most moderate Democrats in the Senate, I can't speak to that. I imagine that it has to do with, how she ingrained herself into the political and capital class over time. I don't know what's going on in her head, but she's not legislating like the pink-haired person that she's presented herself as. So, I think that she might be subject to pressure on this in a way that other people have, and that's what I can hope.
But she's a woman, guys, so it's all negated. Natalie, Shure, Esperanza, Fonseca, thank you so much for joining us again on this Fun Friday. Hope to see you again very soon. And to everybody else who's been joining us on Twitch, I was told, what was I told to say? Hang on, there was something I was supposed to say on Twitch. Help me out here, Dorsey. This is a thing that I was told to say on Twitch. Oh yeah, this is a nice little a pogger. Say the word. Just Kyle tells me to say not pog. Pogger to the Twitch audience, and everyone laughed at me. So I'm not sure. Whatever. Make fun of me. I don't understand this, okay? I'm not a gamer, but the Twitchers told me to say Pogger. So Pogger. But if you want to know a game that I do like, it's Frogger. I played that when I was like in middle school. I'm really into Frogger. All right. Thanks to everybody who's on Twitch at Twitch.tv and those on YouTube, of course, all of our chatters, everybody who submitted questions. Northern Lights. Let's take a look at this. Live from Norway. Sends Northern Lights Dragon says, I love progressive shows and I'm looking for more female voices. You are so important and so needed. You inspire me. Love from Norway. Love to you as well. We're trying to change this ecosystem. Have more female voices, change the viewership as well, which is pretty strong when it comes to being overwhelmingly male. So if you're a guy and you know some women that might be interested in watching these shows, bring them on over. We're trying to change how the algorithm works. We're trying to buck the system a little bit here. All right, what other... Okay, we have in Konst sending their love. Nomiki, I have a proposition for you. When you hit 75K and then 100K, you stream a game on Twitch. Oh, that's a good incentive. For 75K, it's Among Us. At 100, it's Monster Hunter World. I can even play with you as a gaming buddy. I'm down. Let's do it. Let's do it. Also, Nomiki, I'm curious, what is your connection to Gamergate? You can answer at the end, but during your last Fun Friday with Anna, you brought it up and it seemed like you had a personal connection to it. What happened? No, I didn't have any personal connection. I just have been reading a lot more about it. I've been interviewing folks about how this weird, just how the Red-Brown Alliance sort of formed and how some of these fascistic, how the media has exacerbated the far right. And I've interviewed a few historians and people who research this. And there's a big tie back to Gamergate and the misogyny from Gamergate. Maybe I'll bring one of them on to talk more about that specific angle, because I do think it's fascinating for a Femme Friday. And Konst also says, RIP Michael. He was a true legend. He was a dear friend. And Gypsy Mama sends her love. Orb Rumor. This is just my second donation ever to any of my sub channels. Thank you. In honor of Michael. Thank you for sharing your stories with us today, Lisha. Thank you so much, Orb Rumor. And Prairie Fire Kowalski from Nebraska. Michael was the first person I ever talked to on the online left, and have to say that he was very warm and inviting. Miss our blues brother Brooks, but feel fortunate to have spoken with him. Y'all rock. Thank you. And Lee, Socialist Davos is one of the best oxymorons I've ever heard in some time. Also look forward to Fun Half next Tuesday with you and Emma's sport takes. Oh my God. My sport takes. It's basically Emma's sport takes and me just being like, do tennis? Some pop culture or political reference. That's all I have for sports. Craven James. And it's embarrassing, by the way, because I grew up in Buffalo, which is the ultimate sports town. It's like Boston and Buffalo. I mean, that's Buffalo is just sports. And I am not that person. I was sitting there with a book and doing arts and crafts while everybody was watching the Super Bowl, because it was an experience growing up. I lived through the 4 Super Bowls that Buffalo and Dallas Cowboys, and I think what's the Florida Marlins? Were they in? Or is that's baseball? I don't know. See what I'm saying? I don't even know. Craven James says, phenomenal interview with Lisha Brooks. Love hearing her perspective on politics on the left. Hope to see her again on the majority on the majority or the Nomiki show. What was that? Where did that come from? Man. Thanks to Harvey K, always in the chat room, mixing it up on YouTube and Twitch. Harvey switched to Twitch today, I just learned, and yesterday, because it's on his iPad. And Twitch is really good with the iPad, I was told. And big thank you to Mario Q for working those algorithms. And as always, our moderators, Bob, Chokin, and The Orb, and Chuck Diesel, all on YouTube, and Dorian Sapiens in A Difficult Truth, and Nug Wrangler on Twitch for keeping that chat room troll free. Chat room troll free. Say that 10 times fast. Oh, wait, one last one. JL says, thank you for the stream today, Nomiki. Keep up the good work. Midi Docs, you're the best. Always there. Doing the Lord's work. The Lord, the algorithm, YouTube, Lord's work. That's what this is. We love you guys. We will see you on Tuesday, live, same time, same place. And shout out to all of our patrons and everybody listening to us on podcast. Be well, stay in solidarity.